Welcome to Purpose Driven Sobriety. Okay, thank you for joining Purpose Driven Sobriety. I want to say today's show is sponsored by Putnam Bookkeeping and Tax Service here in Waco, Texas. So if you're in the Central Texas area, or quite frankly, you could be anywhere and need bookkeeping or tax service, Greg Putnam has been a family friend of my family for 34 years. He's a good old boy, and he's a smarty pants. So he'd be honored to take care of you in that sense. You can look him up on Facebook under Putnam Bookkeeping. So today we have Mr. David L.
You can use the last name.
Okay, Ludlow, Mr. David Ludlow. Well, you just never know with anonymity and what have you. But you have traveled far, sir, to come be on the show, and I'm grateful to you. I met David on the intraweb. Basically, we're in several, I think we're in a few recovery pages. There is some good resources online, on Facebook, namely, if you are a family member, have trouble with addiction, there is some good resources, some good support. So I met David. I'm sure you shared something that I commented on, and we started a conversation. And it's one of those things that when someone speaks your language, I mean, if you're in the in this community, in this addiction, alcoholism addiction world, you recognize each other. And so I loved what you shared, and I do all the time. And I'm just really impressed with you. So thank you so much for coming up and agreeing to sit down with me. So on the show, we just basically, share what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, just to kind of reach that person who's still suffering. Yeah. So tell me all the things.
Well, thanks for having me. And it's funny how our recovery community works. I think it says it somewhere in some of our literature, that, we can win the confidence of another addict or alcoholic usually within the first couple of minutes.
Yes. Like no one else can.
Like no one else can. We speak that language and we have that bond.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Either deep rooted in trauma or fear, all the baselines of our disease. Mm-hmm. And when you speak to somebody that's on the other side of that, there's a connection that's formed, whether you know that person or not.
I love it.
And that is truly the uniqueness of having this disease, mm-hmm. right? But I'm no different than anybody else who's been afflicted from this. I grew up in the mean streets of West Houston, in a suburb called Katy, Texas. And, when we grew up out there, it was like living on an island. My parents built a house out there in the early 70s, and my mom taught in the school district. I mean, I come from a great home. My dad was successful. My mom was a successful educator, and I was an only child, and, had everything. Wow. But it wasn't enough. Mm. There was something that was always still empty inside of me, and it wasn't anything that anybody necessarily had done. Like any other kid, had run-ins with other kids or disagreements or whatever, light bullying, but nothing severe, right? And but I don't know. I think I was born with this disease. I think probably.
Now, does it run in your family?
It does.
That's always an interesting question, because believe it or not, and it's funny, David, I got to tell you. I'll have to think back to which guest it was. But when you say, was there a family history, and they're like, no, and you're like, oh, that's interesting.
Because really only in about a third. I think the numbers prove, the numbers prove about a third of it is not genetic, and the other 2/3, more than likely, you have the gene.
Wow.
And, but my family's from Louisiana, and drinking's a big part of the culture there. And I remember, being a child and having a drink, or sips of drinks at parties and mm-hmm. things like that, and never thought anything of it. Saw some of the behaviors, but I equated alcohol with fun. Mm-hmm. And so when I got to an age, not legally, of course, but when I got to an age where I could experience alcohol, I enjoyed it. because it was fun.
So did you? So back to that question. Did you do you have a history in the family of it
yes.
being a problem?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes, I mean later on as I've learned grown in this thing and understood,
more is revealed.
More, yes, more and lots
Unfortunately
was revealed. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, no, it definitely ran on my mother's side. It was prevalent.
Got it.
And certainly as I got older, saw the effects of it. And I was even before I got sober. So, it wasn't even like, oh, well, I guess that's just what happens.
Right.
If you do this long enough.
Right.
There are consequences.
Sure.
Right. So I had those first couple drinks and I loved it. Just to be honest.
So do you remember that? Because a lot of people will say, I got a warmth or my shoulders
it was
relaxed.
Just something different because I had, as I got to like my teenage years, I was always, so I excelled at a specific sport, tennis at the time and in the 80s. And growing up in Katy at the time was like living on an island in Houston. And I couldn't wait to get off the island. And I played this sport that got me out of Katy. I was a nationally ranked and state ranked junior player. So, I traveled quite a bit. I was outside of our little bubble community, and which was great because I had lived in this pattern of fear, which I'm able to understand today, but not then. I was just always afraid to be my authentic self because I never really felt like I was good enough, or if my parents had enough money, or if we had the right kind of car.
So to your peers.
My peers.
Or just the general world.
Yeah, I was full of envy and jealousy and all these character traits of a real alcoholic and addict. What that instills into that early stages of trauma. Well, I just manifested that. And when I was able to ingest that alcohol, all that fear and all that stuff went away. It just melted away and it was beautiful because then I felt a part of, and I chased that elusive feeling for the next 3+ decades.
Really,
and then in high school, growing up, one of the fortunate things about growing up in the 80s is that we were introduced to a really fun white powdery substance. And that was magical to me. Magical. And you would think that at such an early age, being exposed to some of these things, and it really was when we say everywhere, it was everywhere.
Oh, right.
And it didn't matter if you could be the top level athletes in the school. You could be the smart kids, or you could be the ones, the seedy kids. Cocaine and ecstasy and alcohol, that was high school in the 80s. It certainly was where I was at.
Right.
And anyone else that I talked to all throughout the city or other cities or states that I got to travel to, that was the similar experience. And so this idea of, yes, we knew it was wrong, but so is speeding.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Or stealing something.
Yeah. So I'm 10 miles over the speed limit. Well, everyone does it.
Right.
So you didn't really think anything of it and never really had any consequences from it. But I got hurt my senior year pretty severely. I almost tore my hamstring. Severed it.
Wow.
And so I had lost a lot of scholarship opportunities to go play tennis because I wasn't even walking. I was on crutches for about 7-8 months. And that was difficult. And then not knowing what I was going to do, and because school was never a priority, because I knew tennis was going to pay for my education. And when that was taken away from me.
Where were you? Yeah.
Boom. And now
where does
all
that
of a
leave
sudden
you?
I'm stuck really with these kids that I've grown up with since kindergarten. I've known, like, our community was still small but growing, but I've known these kids my whole life, but I didn't know them. And then that even drove that fear even a little bit more of who could I be? Because when I could go to another school, another state, another city, I could just make shit up.
Right.
I could make things up because I knew what I thought you wanted to hear.
Right.
And so that that control. I wanted to control outcomes.
So you were and I've often said, with me, I can look back now, and I had this massive trunk where I stored all my masks and my costumes. And it's like, oh, I'm going here, so I have to be this person. Yep. Oh, I'm going here, so I have to be this. And it was just exhausting.
It truly was. And yeah, because I was too afraid to be my authentic self. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't even know who I was. At that point, you just start believing your own bullshit.
Sure.
And like, what's real?
And then you throw substance into it. And
wow. Yeah. And then you just forget about it. Oh, and then the anxiety goes away. Right. And then I don't have to worry about it. And so what's the easiest way to do is just keep making stuff up.
Right.
And then so now my senior year, I'm primarily in Katy with these group of kids. And it seemed like the normal thing to do would be, well, I'm going to be that guy, whether how many people knew it or not, because of some connections that I had. I'm going to be the guy that people are going to get stuff from.
Oh,
because
dear.
Then people are going to like me. Right? Logical.
It makes perfect sense to me.
And common sense to a 17-year-old alcoholic who's putting cocaine and ecstasy in their body every weekend. That's a normal.
What a way to be liked.
Of thought, right?
Yeah. What a way to be the popular
because
guy.
My pager went off all the time. That's a little thing that used to beep for those of you that aren't quite old enough to understand.
That would show a phone number.
That would show a phone number.
That you'd have to find a phone to call.
And if it said 911 at the end of the minute, it means
make it
urgent,
now.
Which meant you could charge more.
See?
That's the business part of me.
Wow.
And so I did that. And then, fast forward, a few months, I ended up being able to get an opportunity to go play tennis at a school so far off the island in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, wow.
So in 1989, I pack up and I still wasn't even playing tennis yet. And I committed to go to this school to go play tennis in Cleveland, Ohio. And I went up there. Did really well school-wise. And then the end of that season, and I went 18-0. I went undefeated as a freshman. So, I was back playing. I got to play at, at a really high level of tennis, relatively speaking, right?
Sure.
And, I won the Ohio Athletic Conference as a freshman. And I'm like, all right. But what I didn't realize is that winters in Cleveland, Ohio is vastly different than winters in the South. And I couldn't deal with that. And so I was dating a girl. I stayed up there to teach summer camps because I was just going to stay up there for the summer. My parents' best friends lived there. They were... He was the dean of the business school. That's how I got there.
Sure.
And there's more to that story a little bit later. And then, but I knew I really wasn't going to stay. And so I came home and my parents went up there and I was supposed to come right back. And I never did. And they're like, well, what do we tell this girl? I'm like, just tell her I'm not coming back.
Oh, wow. Get
my stuff. Because I had torn my rotator cuff. And so I knew I wasn't going back. And then I jumped right back into what I knew how to do.
So you were back in Katy.
I was back in Katy, back in Houston. Tanning salon business was blowing up in the early 90s. And, I was a part of a group where, we were running tanning salons and, I was in the nightclubs every single night doing my thing, right? Life was good. And one fateful night, there was a knock on the door. It was Thursday night. It's 1991. I remember the girl I was living with. She was asleep on the couch, and no one knew where I lived. There was a knock on the door. There's a nice man and a lady, and they introduced themselves, and they were with the DEA.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And I said, okay. They had the right paperwork to enter, but they were polite enough to ask, right? And they came in and started asking me about some things. Some of it was foreign. I didn't really understand what they were talking about, but then they had, asked me, do you mind if we search the apartment? And I said, sure. I mean, they were just nice enough to ask.
Right,
they were going to do it anyways, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't search it. They went right to the kitchen, opened up the broiler pan of the oven where I had a backpack with 2.5 kilos of cocaine. When I was 20 years old, which was bad.
That's bad.
That's bad.
That's bad.
But what I didn't know is that this cocaine that I had been getting from a guy, and he's the only person that knew where that cocaine was. My girlfriend didn't even know it was there. Like, nobody knew except for one person. But what I did know is that him and his little cronies, they had robbed somebody, and 2 people were killed.
Oh, wow.
So that was a fun phone call home. Not only do I have these incredible drug charges, which I was looking at serious prison time, but I also had, conspiracy to murder, organized crime. I mean, it was a litany of charges. And, it's funny how God or whatever that is, what I able to recognize now, how he was just waiting for me to get my head out of my ass 30 years later.
So you were still using during that time too. What was that? So did they take you to jail?
Oh yeah.
Like that night? I mean, I know that may be a dumb question, but if they were that nice, they may have said turn yourself in the next morning or something like that.
No, they politely took me with the other.
Put you pretty silver bracelets on.
Then I got to make that phone call home.
Got it.
And that was tough, to say that my mother was not pleased would be an understatement.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
And the rage of emotions and the embarrassment, that I put them through.
I'm sure the fear too. I mean, that's,
the fear, the anger, the anxiety. I'd never been in trouble before. And so if, I used to laugh.
If you're going to do it right.
Go home, right?
Right.
But, you would think though that with some of those consequences that would have straightened me out, but it didn't. And over the next year, because I didn't know any of the people involved, I didn't know any part of that. The only thing that I knew was that I was in possession of this stuff.
Right.
Well, how'd you get it? Well, this is who I got it from. The person that told y'all where it was. Right.
Right.
And so, I helped them just formulate their cases on these other people. I don't know who, again, I don't know who these people are. I have no relationship to them. I could care less at that point. But through the course of that, and then my dad's business partner at the time had just moved to a really, nice suburb in Houston, not suburb, but inside Houston, West University. My, one of my dad's business partners, his next door neighbor was an attorney. And this attorney that we hired just so happened, he had just gone into criminal defense a couple years prior to.
Oh, wow.
But he was the number 2 person of the special prosecutors division, and his best friend was my prosecutor. What are the odds?
Right.
What are the odds? And so through the course of that, we go to court that morning, and they had already dropped all the other stuff, but I was still looking at 45 years in prison.
Wow.
And did not think I was going home that day. And then Mr. O'Brien pulled me into his office and said, Bob will be up in a few moments. And, he basically said, if it wasn't for my relationship with your attorney and kind of against my better judgment, I'm going to drop this intent to distribute. And you're going to get to go home today.
So tell me you learned your lesson and everything was okay. There we go.
But I did try to change my people, places, and things to think that my life would get better. But it did not. Because the problem was I still went wherever I geographically tried to change things.
There's
as they say.
There's a saying in recovery, wherever you go, there you are. If a lot of people think that when I don't even think they think, they just act, when they're in active addiction. And again, whether it be drugs or alcohol, addiction is addiction. Mind altering is mind altering. And I'm going to keep saying that because it's all the same. But people think, if I'll just get a better job, I'll just get a different spouse, I'll just, have some kids, or I'll move to this city, or you're taking you with you, and you are the problem 100%. Ultimately.
No, I will say this. So I end up getting probation, the max that they could give me. In my first 6 months, I got my probation revoked 4 times because I couldn't stay clean.
Oh, wow.
Right. I mean, you think at some level I'd be scared out of my mind.
But see, that's the disease.
But here's the thing, because now I just realize I can buy my way out of anything.
Oh.
That's the other flip side of this. Well, Mike started equating money. Money can fix anything.
Or those relationships. It's who you know.
It's all about relationships. It's all about money. And then money then became my God, in a sense. It became my higher power. The more I have of it, the more I can mask things that are going on with me. Or I can just buy the influence that I want anyways.
Right.
And so I end up moving to St. Louis in 1993. We were able to petition the state of Texas and graciously let me leave. And so, and that was good. I mean, I got a business degree, did really well in school, had some really good opportunities when I got out of school. I met a girl, had gotten engaged. I mean, and in one weekend, I graduated college, I got off probation, and a month earlier, I just got married.
Oh, wow.
So things were happening. And I was still drinking, but I wasn't doing the other stuff.
Sure.
And then I got into mortgage banking in the early 90s when it was exploding. And then that just opened up the floodgates. I mean, because it was like a kid in a candy store. I entertained. Part of my job was to entertain brokers. And so I was at some event 5 nights a week. And when you throw a bunch of 20, 30 something year olds with, making hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
We're not just sitting around reading the Bible.
Right. Yeah.
It's steak dinners every night. It's bottles of wine and bottles of scotch and going to ball games and hockey games. That was the life. And the more we had of that, well, then eventually I found what I'd always wanted, and that was the cocaine part of it. But I still knew that for 30 plus years, that first time doing cocaine with a little bit of alcohol, that mixture, that combination, that feeling, and I tried hundreds of combinations of how to get that feeling. Could never find it.
Only a one time around. Well, that's the difference.
That elusive feeling.
Really? I didn't have that experience because I was strictly alcohol. Drugs scared the shit out of me. I mean, I tried.
But I didn't think ecstasy and cocaine were really drugs. Like I thought, like if you're really doing drugs, like you're putting a needle in your
shooting
arm.
up meth and
that's a drug addict.
Okay, well.
Again, that was my training.
No, I know. Right, no, I get it. It's what's funny is I totally get it.
I could justify anything. Well, I'm not doing that.
Right. Right.
I mean, because again, you're talking about the 80s. Cocaine was glorified.
But I'm trying to, in my mind's eye, I'm trying to compare.
It was every stockbroker. It was every banker. It was every attorney.
Well,
it was like, you're not a drug addict.
Right.
A drug addict's what you see on the corner, the homeless people that have no shoes.
That's lost every single thing.
That's a drug addict.
Right.
That's an alcoholic.
Right.
No.
Right. And people still have that mindset.
And that's the stigma. And
right.
That's why I choose today to recover out loud as possible.
But I was thinking, it was funny when you were talking about trying to, that when you said that initial feeling, trying to get that, same thing. It was just, a different type of alcohol, more, it's. Yeah, I totally get that. Even just with alcohol. So that's just kind of a revelation to me right now.
And the core root of my alcoholism and my addiction was really, really more so mooreism. I was never satisfied with anything, no matter how much I had. I mean, I had periods of time where I made a ton of money. It was never enough. Never. I had moments of happiness, but happiness is temporary.
It has to do with happenings.
Yes, it's always
it's not joy.
Temporary. It's never enough. Right. And so today, you know, I've learned what joy is. And even on my worst days, I still have joy today.
Right.
You know, and that's what recovery's taught me. And so
in St. Louis, so okay, we go back. We digress.
So I'm in St. Louis. I mean, I graduate. I get into banking. I get divorced 13 months into my marriage because I am an incredible husband, and it's not my fault.
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
Because she's the one that changed.
Yes.
My unwillingness to change probably is really what led to the demise of it. But no, I mean, ultimately, I was checking off boxes. I thought these are the things that people want me to do.
Right.
And I wasn't really in love. But I also didn't really want to get divorced either because of the stigma part of it.
Sure.
I mean, again, because I still didn't even know, am I happy? I don't even know. Because at that point, I mean, I'm putting in a lot of alcohol in my system. And like I said, and it wasn't until a couple years later that we find the other stuff. And then it just manifested. But again, I had a couple houses, I had a couple cars. I mean, I was making a ton of money. How can I have a problem? I have all this stuff. I got stuff still. I can't have a problem. I can't be an addict. I can't be an alcoholic.
Well, at face value, you know, and that's kind of like, I think I mentioned it on another show too. You know, that's kind of like when you hear of a celebrity, you know, committing suicide. You know, everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. They had so much to live for." It's like, no, they had so much to live on.
Yes.
In their mind's eye, or wherever in their mind, they had nothing to live for, and there's that emptiness.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was.
Will drive you crazy.
I found these substances. I found money. I found a different pair of shoes to buy every single day to fill this void, this unhappiness that was inside me, and I didn't know another way to fill it. That was my solution, right? We talk about, I mean, you know, drugs and alcohol. That wasn't the problem. Right. That was my solution. Sure. My problem was what was going on between my ears. It was my thinking. That's what I truly had, is a thinking problem. And then, surprisingly enough, things did not get better. They just get worse. Newsflash.
That's how it works.
That's how it works. It never gets better.
It never gets better. It always gets
worse.
And
then I lost everything in St. Louis, and you know, I made the decision, and I moved back home to Katy, and 10 months later, my dad passed away, and my dad was my best friend, my business partner. He was my best man at my wedding, super close. My mom and I did not have a very good relationship at all, and it wasn't to any fault of her own. It's just that she wouldn't buy my bullshit, and so that was in conflict with me. And so
that was inconvenient.
That was an inconvenience that, you know, she was trying to speak some truths, and maybe our communication things weren't healthy, but the problem really in the relationship wasn't her, it was me. Because again, I was fueled with alcohol and cocaine. Right. It's hard to be really present. Right. When you're always full of poison. Right. Right. And then, so my dad passes away, and to the Halloween night, 2005, I'm an only child, and it's just my mom and I. At that time, it was just my aunt, my cousin, and myself that was left in our family. I mean, there's no other family, and that number is one less today. You know, it's just my cousin and my mom and I, and my cousin doesn't live in Houston, and so it's just her and I, and I set off on this downward spiral for the next 12 years. Oh, wow. That got really dark, got really deep. I racked up 6 more felonies along the way because I was overachieving in life. From fraud to counterfeit to drug possession. How I never ended up in prison is beyond me. It's that protected me long enough. And really good representation and some money along the way. Certainly didn't help,
Right.
Or helped. But it truly was, whatever that is truly running this thing, had something better for me. But I had to go through what I had to go through, and it was dark. There was
Tell me about that.
there were periods of time where, I was seeing a psychiatrist, and they gave me, Zoloft and Klonopin and all this stuff. And there were, because I had all these legal problems, and all of a sudden it's like, I have pissed my life away. What's the effing point? I've given away my life. What's the point? And there were so many nights where I looked at those bottles of pills and it was like, that's the answer. That's the answer. Because I'd never heard of anybody going to rehab. I didn't know anybody that had died from drugs. I was still really kind of protected in a sense, from, I guess, the really bad stuff that people probably have far more so than me had experienced at that point. But I didn't know of any other answers, and until it got really bad. It got really bad, really dark. And I had started dating this girl in 2015, and her and my mom got pretty close. And that's more of that kind of working. People working in our lives when we don't know that they're working in our lives, right? But they got close, which allowed at least some civility to happen between my mom and I, because we couldn't sit in the same
she was
room.
like a buffer almost.
She was.
Yeah.
Not kinda. She was. And
Wow.
so she basically, she called up Gladys and said, "Hey, can y'all come over?" And this was sometime like early April 2017. And basically my mom said, "Look, you've got a problem. And I found a place for you to go get some help. But if you don't go, you're not welcome here anymore."
Wow. Way to go, Mom.
Right. And
I'm probably not in the moment, but
it was a fuck you.
Yeah, right. I was gonna say, but man, how much, wow, that tells me volumes about her, David.
Let me tell you how sick I was. What I told her that day was, let me think about it. Right.
Yeah, backtracking.
And then the morning I decided, when I ultimately made the decision to go. But that morning that I picked up the cashier's check, because I was 45 years old, didn't have a pot to piss in, no insurance, nothing. But what she said was, "I'm willing. This is the last bit of money I will ever give you, or help you with,
right,
in this state. And if you don't go, you're written out of the will. You're written out of our family trust. You will have nothing. If you show up at this house again, I will have you arrested. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm ready to let you go." And I couldn't imagine the strength that took.
I want to meet
woman.
her.
But my words to her that morning, when I snatched the check out of her hand, was, "Fuck you. You're my problem. If you would just die, I wouldn't be in this situation." Because my mom for years had made proclamations that she would help me and do things, but she never did. And so I held that resentment against her, that she's the one that's holding me back. No, it's because I was never willing to change my behaviors. And I don't blame her. I wouldn't have, no, I'm not going to keep so you can just keep getting in trouble?
She was watching you kill yourself.
She was watching me kill myself. And she told us that I'm not going to watch you kill yourself anymore. And so the day I walked into treatment, and what I found out a little bit later, is that my mom had been going to Al-Anon for about 6 months.
Oh, there it is. There
and that's
it
what
is.
Gave her that strength
praise God.
To stand up to me.
Y'all, Al-Anon, if you're listening, Al-Anon is, okay, first of all, It's not my scene. It's not my sponsor made me go to an Al-Anon meeting. It was the first 30 days I was sober, and I came out of there and I told her, I said, I'm going to kill myself if you make me go. I mean, I know that sounds dramatic, but it was just
because we don't want to hear the truth.
Well, yeah, and they're a different meeting than our meeting down at
it's a different recovery.
Yes, but Al-Anon is for family members of people in addiction, and it saved Rick, my husband. I mean, which I hated at the time too, because I watched him. You know what it was, David? I watched him start to take care of himself, and then all of a sudden, my problem was no longer his problem.
It was just your problem.
I know. Rude.
Pissed me off.
Oh,
right?
man. And I was like, well, and so I mean, I'm grasping at everything I can to try to get, and he's like, I'm finished with this, and that was,
wipe my hands.
Praise God for Al-Anon, y'all. If you're a family member, check it out. You've got to take care of yourself.
Because, it's not your fault. It wasn't my
And there's
mom's.
nothing you can do about it. You've got to.
There really is nothing you can do about it except surrender to the fact that you don't have the answers. There's no frothy appeal comes straight out of a literature from a family member that will
or guilt or shame or
guilt or shame. None of that stuff works.
None of it works.
Surrender. Put your loved one in the hands of some professionals, and then just pray.
Well, yeah, and take care of yourself. Well, and
take care of yourself.
And the analogy that we use in recovery, it's, if you're on an airplane and there's trouble and the masky things come down, what's the first thing you're supposed to do? You're supposed to put it on yourself first, because unless you're taking care of yourself, you're of no use to the people around you. And 100%. It's the same thing in recovery. So
right.
If you have a family member, do seek that out. So I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, I mean, it's a huge part of it because that was really that day one. And
God
so
bless her.
I walked into treatment at a facility in Houston, the Right Step. That place saved my life. But I walked into treatment that day and I weighed 126 pounds. They told me if I didn't stop doing what I was doing, I was probably going to die in 6 months. I don't know if that was true or not. But I was bad. I looked terrible. I'm.
So did you want to be there, or were you there to shut her up?
I went there to shut her up.
Okay. Because I went to treatment to shut.
I went there to shut her up.
Yeah.
Or just to buy some time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Let me figure out.
Buy some good graces.
Let me figure out how I can manipulate this situation. Right. That was the true.
She'll calm down.
She'll get over this, right? And thankfully Gladys was like, just go. It's 30 days. I'm like, no, but at that time I was selling a ton of weed.
You have such important things you have to do.
Because people relied on me.
Right.
Where are people going to get their weed from? That's how I supported myself.
I know.
Because contrary to popular belief, a guy with 7 felonies on his record wasn't getting hired as a CEO or a vice president of a company. And that's what my entitled ass thought I deserved. Zero humility. I had this huge ego and this broken self-esteem.
Wow.
And I was broken in every sense of the word. Morally, financially, spiritually. I mean, I was broken.
But you didn't know it.
I didn't know it.
At the time.
No.
Even walking into treatment.
Not even walking into treatment. Well, not too long after walking into treatment. Because they told me 2 things. I remember my intake counselor, and I share this with folks just about every day, because I'm in the treatment space today, and they told me 2 things that changed my life. They said, David, you never have to feel this way again. Okay, sounded reasonable. Wasn't sure if it would be attainable. And then they told me that my best days were yet to come. And here I thought for so many years, a decade plus, that I'd given my entire life away, that I had my purpose in life was already gone. Right?
You blew it.
I blew it. Chances gone. And to have somebody that didn't know me tell me that I never had to feel this way again, and that my best days were yet to come, if I just took this recovery thing serious. And again, sounded reasonable, just not me, because I'm unique, right? I've got a unique that tells me I'm terminally unique, that no one's going to understand. Nobody's gone through what I've gone through. See, because if you went through what I've gone through, you'd be in the same situation. Right. But the miracle of recovery is that it's full of people like me. And I'm just the surface level. There are people that have recovered that have had it far worse than I had. And my bottoms were low, but they weren't as low as some.
But you know what?
But you can't compare bottoms.
See, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
You don't have to get to that point.
Right. That makes me crazy when someone comes in the room, a recovery room, and they're like, well, I've not lost my house. I've not lost it. I don't think I belong here. And it's like, how do you feel? Do you want to literally crawl out of your own butthole? I mean, can you stand your own presence?
You don't have to have consequences.
Right. It's
the
like
yets don't have to happen.
Say that again.
The yets don't have to happen.
Okay, we're going to skip at that.
Because they will.
Oh, they will.
It's inevitable.
If
you don't die.
It doesn't get better. It doesn't get better.
But that's the only other alternative.
But you don't have to wait until you don't have to wait until the DA is at the door.
If you have ever asked yourself, do I think I have a problem? Chances are you have a problem.
Right. Well, or chances are you need to thoroughly explore that to make sure. If
at some level there's a problem. If you're asking yourself, I think I may have a problem, chances are 99.8, that's not scientific. That's Ludlow math. But chances are you've got a problem.
See, and on the flip side, I was the one that was my last drunk was a Sam-size bottle of Listerine. And if you, David, if you would have hooked me up, to a lie detector test and asked me, Christine, do you have a problem with alcohol?
No.
David, I would have passed because I wasn't drinking alcohol.
I believed my own bullshit.
Yeah, and I knew it to be true, and damned anybody else who didn't think so. So yeah, bottom is bottom, man. Yeah. And the bottom is when you stop digging.
It doesn't have to be that guy on the curb.
Right.
That's
no. That's
not it.
Right.
So I remember coming out of the intake stuff, and they were escorting me, over to the house. It was a series of houses, and I remember walking in the courtyard. But I do remember walking through the gates and hitting that courtyard, and then there was like I was still experiencing fear, but not living with the fear and shame the same feeling that I'd been carrying. There was something that was kind of lifted from me, that almost in a sense, not knowing what was coming, but I do vividly remember that, you know what? Okay, maybe this could be the start of something different.
Maybe I've got a second chance.
Maybe.
Yeah. Or a 587th chance.
Maybe a chance of just doing something different.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know. But I remember that feeling. And it wasn't until, a few days in, we went to some meetings every night, and I was like, I cannot believe that you people believe this stuff, because it still wasn't convinced. But at that point, I knew I had a problem with cocaine. State of Texas can verify that. Didn't need any other verification. But I didn't equate the fact that I was an alcoholic. I didn't understand that. And I certainly was not going to stop smoking weed, because that was my anxiety. That was the thing. Not only that, that's how I made money. Right. So there was all these good reasons of why I'm going to keep smoking weed. Right. But no, it wasn't until about 10 days in, I remember sitting in a meeting, and when I introduced myself, hi, my name is David, and I'm an alcoholic. Because I started to understand that everything that I was hearing in the meetings, men that I was talking to that had never met me, all these men were telling me the same thing. And not only that, I was reading it in our literature, exactly what was wrong with me. And they talked about a solution.
Yeah.
But I remember it was my 5th night in treatment, and we went to a speaker meeting, and I didn't know what that was, but all I knew was that this was the first meeting that we got to early. so we could pick our own seats. Because my very first meeting we were late to, and the only seats that were available in this men's meeting of about 70 men were on the front row.
Oh, dear.
And then sitting right in front of me was these two little signs on the beam and off the beam. If you don't know what it is, look it up. Mm-hmm. And the promises. And I don't remember anything that was said during the meeting, but all I kept reading was on and off the beam, and how I was every one of the things that were off the beam, and I wanted to be everything that was on the beam.
Wow.
And then I read those promises, and I'm like, maybe that's what that lady was talking about at my intake. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. Maybe. And so we go to the speaker meeting, and I was able to find a seat in the back corner of the room.
The exit chair.
Literally where I could lean my head back and to the side. When I say in the corner, I was in the corner. And there was a pillar about 10 feet in front of me, so I could kind of block me from the front. And I was like, cool, get my little hour power nap in. Because at this point, I'm starting to feel pretty good because I haven't had any poison in my body for about 10 days.
Sure.
And I'm starting to hear some things. I'm starting to, but okay, but here's a chance to check out. And this young girl, and let me back up. I started hearing things where I started going to meetings and pre-selecting, without them saying a word, who I might pay attention to. Right. And then, because I was looking for similarities, not listening for similarities.
Ah.
Like that person I'm probably going to listen to because I like their shoes.
Which is what kind of got you in trouble to begin with, because you were trying to,
that old way of thinking.
Yeah.
I hadn't figured this
that
thing
obsession.
out. Right? That obsession, right? It's like, oh, you got nice shoes, so I'm going to listen to what you have to say.
Because you probably got it together.
Probably doesn't have it together, but I like your shoes, right? And so I could have picked apart every single reason. Young girl, been sober at that time. I mean, she had 10 years sober. Different ethnic background. She got sober at 17. Like, I'm 45.
Nothing in common.
Right?
How could we possibly relate?
Except for about 10 minutes into her speaking, I felt myself sitting on the edge of my seat, hanging on to every word that she spoke that night. And we've come to find out, and she's one of my bestest and dearest friends in the program today, that was God or higher power or that. I like to just refer to it as that because it keeps it simple for me. That whatever that is, that was speaking to me that night through her.
Wow.
In a room full of 100 people. She didn't know who I was, but she was speaking to me. That was God speaking to me that night. No doubt about it. And so I went back to the treatment center that night and I said, okay. And that's when I first got introduced to our literature. And they said, why don't you read the doctor's opinion? And I said, well, all right, where is this big book that y'all are talking about? Because I'm pretty sure if you told me you gave me a big book, I'd recognize a big book. But it was just a little pocket edition. And it was at the bottom of my suitcase at that point because I had no intentions of reading anything that they had to say. But I did. And that's when I started to understand what was going to be necessary for a transformation to happen, a transformation of mindset, the psychic change that we talk about. And that's simply, man, I just had to start thinking about things differently. I had to start thinking about my life differently. I had to start thinking about my experiences differently. And there was no amount of shame that was going to fix my problem. I couldn't shame myself into recovery. You
know what? I remember too getting into that same book for the first time, honestly, right? And it's so to feel, ism. I heard a speaker, say the acronym ISM. I separate myself.
100%.
And so I know exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about how you didn't feel a part of, and you just, it's like you don't know who you are. You're constantly, but to open that book and a friend challenged me to get a highlighter. and highlight all of the sentences that I was like, oh, I felt that, or I've done that, or oh my gosh, yeah, ooh, I know about that. Anything like that.
So pages
and David,
are highlighted.
oh my gosh,
Pages.
the entire friggin' book practically. Yeah. I mean, aside from the fact that it said man and I could change, it's like. But there was something so
powerful,
freeing to go, oh, okay, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, yes,
okay.
maybe, yes, it was crazy.
Then I started hearing that same message in the meetings.
Yes.
Right? It's like, okay. And then
that's familiar.
And then the key thing for me when she got done speaking to me that night, it was when I that's why I brought up the similarities and the differences. What I would suggest anybody that will watch this, if you go to a meeting, don't look for the person with the nice shoes or the nice watch. Just go and listen. You will hear similar plights of life, right? And I heard enough similarities in her story to mine, and I'd seen. And she shared about what her life was like today. I said, you know what? Why not me? Why not me? All these other people seem to be doing it. I like to think I'm pretty smart. I didn't know a thing about recovery. I know a lot of things about a lot of things, but I didn't know anything about staying sober or living a life in recovery. And then that why not me is just what I've carried. And that's my strength in this thing today. And, I jumped into it and I did everything that they suggested that I do. I worked with a man to help take me through our program, our 12-step fellowship. And my only reason why I agreed to work the 12-step program, because I told him I will show you that it doesn't work. And then be prepared that I will turn around and I will sue you for fraud. I will sue the fellowship for fraud, and I'm going to sue my treatment center for fraud. Because I'm going to show you that, because I still had that uniqueness thing. But that was my ego.
It worked for y'all because there was no possible way you were as bad as I was. Right. Yeah.
And so lo and behold, about 10 months into this thing, life started getting better. And it wasn't great, but it was better. I felt different. My thinking started changing.
So now, were you still living? Where were you during this time?
I went to a sober living facility. 3 months. My first 3 months.
So it's explained for anyone that might not know what that is.
I get out of treatment and I'm all on. I'm all like, you know what? I'll do this. With the pretense that I'm going to show you that it doesn't work, right? But I was committed.
Right.
I was committed to do it. And I really, they gave me a list of about 30 things to do on my discharge plan when I left treatment, and I did all but one of them. It was do 90 meetings in 90 days. I did 137 meetings in my first 90 days.
Wow.
They said get it.
Have you ever? Okay, so let's just say this right now. Have you ever regretted going to a meeting this entire time?
No.
Okay. Ever. Always, it's like just
always got at least one nugget of something.
The hardest
part.
I've
been to a lot of bad meetings. But I still
doesn't
got
matter,
some out
right?
of it.
The hardest part is getting your ass in the car.
Walk through the door. But see, my disease was all based in fear, and so once I started getting a little bit of confidence that if I just walk through that door, there's something magical on the other side, and it's probably not what I want, but it's exactly what I need.
It's a lot better than what I have right now.
Exactly what I needed. And so,
because on the flip side, how many times have you gone to a meeting and something's going on in your life, and just like you said, it's like someone, either the chairperson or someone in the meeting starts talking about that exact problem, and you're like, you have my house bugged, or you have been listening to my conversation.
I love that aspect of it, and I also hate that aspect of it because I still like to try to control things. But life today is pretty good. I got out of treatment. I went to a sober living facility. They told me I had to have a job in 5 days. Now, I hadn't really had a job in a long time. Again, not a lot of people hiring CEOs and vice presidents right out of treatment with 7 felonies.
I can see that.
So I had to learn the humility, and I went to work for a car wash.
Okay.
I was a car wash manager. And I just did this thing. I did what people that were successful in recovery, and not successful monetarily, that had recovered from the seemingly hopeless state of mind and body that I was in, that they had shared with me our similarities, and they had recovered, and I wanted that, and so I just simply
followed directions.
Tell me what to do.
Right.
Tell me what to do.
Tell me how to live.
Because my best thinking, should have landed my ass in prison for the rest of my life.
A couple of times.
Because if you add them up, I was well over 100 years in prison. I've been in situations, and robbery situations where I've had a gun to my head twice and the trigger was pulled. That said, if he could perhaps just stay sober, he can find his purpose. And so I've done this thing, not perfectly, but to the best of my ability. And it was shared with me early on that I got asked this simple question. Chris, and I'll ask you, Christine, you need air to breathe, right? Because you can't deny that fact, right?
That's true.
Without air, what happens?
It's a craving.
Without air,
I die. Yeah.
I better start treating recovery like it's the air that I need to breathe.
You know, and also I got to tell you, that's funny that you mentioned the air thing, because I spoke at a women's conference this past weekend, and one of the things that kept it was again a God thing, and I love that, but I had gotten in the literature, and it talked about the obsession of craving, the obsession of craving, and it's like, and while you're in the act of addiction, you have this obsession of craving that you don't realize you have. And so it's like, okay, believe it or not, you have an obsession of craving for air. You don't know you have it until someone puts a bag over your head.
Right.
Right? I'm sitting here with you, and I'm not thinking that I have an obsession.
I'm not thinking about having to breathe.
Right. I don't have an obsession to make sure that I'm getting air right now. But you put a bag over my head, the obsession of craving shows itself.
Realize I need some air.
Right. It shows itself. Yeah. And so you know, when you're in active addiction, you don't see it. You just don't see it. You know, and until you do, and that's the scariest part about this disease. And I'll never forget. I had a lady come into my office one time. We hold a ladies' meeting in our building, and she got there a little bit early, and she came into my office, and she said, "I can't stop. I just can't stop." And she said, "What's it?" And you could tell her frustration, because, and I don't know exactly what had happened the night before she'd gotten in trouble with that.
It's willpower,
right? But she said, "What's it going to take? Is it going to take me driving with my daughter in the car? Is it going to take me, killing a?" I said, "I don't know, man. That's the scary part. I don't, and for a parent, for mama, before she, with Al-Anon, it's like, what's it going to take? And I don't know, but you have to be willing to watch him kill himself, or, from afar, and separate with love. And such a suck-ass disease,
the strength
man.
That my mom had, and I see that today, the strength and the courage that it took for her to shut the door on her only child.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. And, but life's pretty good today. At about 15, 16 months sober, some things kind of intervened in my life, which helped all my legal stuff kind of get taken care of. Only because I was living a life in recovery.
Doing the deal, yeah.
Doing the next right thing. Just being able to be present. Because in active addiction,
you're either running or chasing.
You are never in today. It's always several hours from now, thinking about that next high, that next drink. How am I going to get it? What do I got to do to get it? Thinking about tomorrow, the corner, or we're living with all the shame and the guilt because we're living in the past,
or in resentments, what they did to me.
Yeah, and so you don't have the mindset, because it's filled with poison, to cloud those things. And because all that poison shuts off all the learning centers of the brain, you can get all into all that side of it, right? But it shuts off all those things. And then once you get into recovery. You know, and if you truly find this thing and you get the poison out of your body, it can open up the growing centers and the learning parts of your brain again. And it's up to you to decide, how do I want to fill that now? You know, do I go back to doing the same things? Well, that would be insanity, right? But I realized that at that point, I didn't really want to die, because I did for the last 5 years before I went to treatment. I woke up every day. I just wanted to die. I mean, please, please.
It would have been welcomed.
And I quote unquote prayed. Maybe I didn't pray right.
Yeah, right.
Because I'm like, why won't you just let me die?
Right.
Well, that's not really a prayer. It's kind of a demand.
Because it feels like you're trying to kill me anyway.
Because that's a demand. And what I learned is whatever that is doesn't operate that way. Now, it may not answer me directly today, but where I find the answers is in my recovery meetings. Because that's whatever that is speaks to me through other people sharing their experience, strength, and hope. That's how I truly get the message. Because I still like things when I want them.
Sure.
And I want an answer. But what I learned is that doesn't operate that way. And for me to get the answer, man, I got to go listen to some other addicts and alcoholics that I found in recovery. Because I always find the answer. And it's always not what I want to hear.
Right. Right. Or, yeah, not what I would have done.
Hear.
Yeah.
You know, it's what I need to hear. You know, and life's pretty good today. But 3.5 years ago, after I got my record cleaned up, which is
a miracle.
Nothing short of a miracle. I realized that I wanted to go work in the recovery space, and I went to work for a small detox center. But I was still actively involved in our alumni group at that time. There was a change of ownership, and I met the new director, so our group CEO at the time, and because I was there doing big book studies, I was leading the alumni stuff, and she's like, you know, who are you? You know, you're here a lot. You know, and I told her, and we started talking, and you know, when they say, you know, others will start to see changes in you before you see it in yourself.
Right.
I was still just trying to figure this thing out at 2.5 years sober, almost 3 years sober. Like, things were okay. Like, I mean, it wasn't great, but it was better than what it was.
Right.
I mean, I had discovered what peace and serenity was, and I knew that, man, if I just keep it, man, I just got to just keep doing the next right thing, and it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And this woman saw something in me that I did not see in myself at the time, and said, you know, we have this position that's we're moving to a new center. We have this position. I want you to come work for me. And, you know, she said, we have this compliance position. And the irony of that today is I lived a life of non-compliance for about 30 plus years. And then that's what I do for a behavioral healthcare company. You know, Promises Behavioral Health is the company that I work for. And we have facilities here in Texas, and I kind of oversee regulatory compliance for our Texas facilities, primarily our facility in College Station, which I'm super proud of.
Wow.
Where we treat substance abuse, and we also have one of the only mental health RTC programs in the state of Texas, and at College Station, and then also the Right Step, where I went to treatment a little over 6 years ago. You know, and it's given me a life beyond what I thought could be possible. What they told me that first day, that my best days were yet to come. Not the problem, is that it just keeps getting better.
The adventure, yeah.
It just keeps getting better, because I have the ability today to be more centered and more present in today, because I'm not worried about tomorrow. Not worried about what happened yesterday. Because I asked myself a couple simple things, and this is how I treat my recovery program. Super simple. How can I be better today than I was yesterday? And I write down 3 things. It's as simple as that. And through that transformation, because what I learned to get good at something, you have to practice it. And I wanted to get good at recovery. Not the things,
right?
But I wanted to get good at recovery. But what we practice, only grows stronger. And so the more I practice it, the stronger I get, the more confidence I have that this is the life that I was truly meant to live, that I would go back and do every one of those things I did prior to getting sober, if I was guaranteed this life that I have today, I would do it all again in a second. My mom and I today have an incredible relationship.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she did nothing to do any part of the change. It was all me. It was all me. She has not changed. The only thing that changed was my behaviors, the way I look at myself, the way I look at other people today, understanding that I have a part in everything. But I'm the only one that has the ability to do anything about it. And that's how I try to stay focused on just being better today than I was yesterday. And I try to carry that message as often as I can. You see me on the social media stuffs. I am all about recovery. It truly is the air that I need to breathe because it's giving me life.
And it's giving it away. It's you can't keep something you're not willing to freely give away. That is in my higher power, who I choose to call God. That's God's rule, man. Yeah. It's like if you want more of something, you have to give it away. Now that is not for everybody. Yeah. I totally get that. 100%. Not everybody can get on social media and say, "Hi, I'm an alcoholic."
No, but share your journey. Have people that you're going to be held accountable to.
Well,
I mean, it could be one or two people.
And even just as simple as be willing that if you're in a circle of people and you have recovery and you hear someone struggling or something, be willing to put that hand out and just go, "Can I tell you something?" Let me share with you.
I think that one of the biggest badges of honor, and this is the stigma that drives me crazy with our disease today, is that there is a level of shame that is a part of somebody asking for help. Oh, it's
just weakness.
It's weakness. You don't have, man, and it is the opposite of that.
And
it takes so much strength and so much courage to say, "I need some help. I have a problem.
I can't do this.
I can't do this. I think I might have a problem." Thank God that we have a solution today. And I understand there are many different pathways to recovery. 12-step fellowship's probably just been around the longest. Probably helped the most number of people, right? That's the one I'm in. I know that there are other pathways. And what I always tell people, I don't care what you do, whether if you leave my treatment facility, another treatment facility, just be doing something. Be doing something.
Well, and just realizing that there is hope. There is hope. Yes. You do not have to ever feel like that again.
Yeah. And you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah. Well, and just, I've been talking with a family member recently about how just this community that we are blessed to be a part of. I will go to my grave believing that this is how God intended us to be.
Yeah, 100%.
Honest and raw with one another. And, you can go into a recovery room and there is just zero judgment. It's the most bizarre thing.
Oh,
that the group one of the groups that I call home, we have doctors and lawyers and then we have the homeless person pushing the cart,
no one cares.
And we are the exact same.
We are the same. That's the thing. Because you know what? If you cut me and you cut you, guess what? We still bleed red.
And we all just want to have peace.
We just want the same thing, so it's, recovery has given me this incredible life today. And I have, one thing I knew early on, is, you want to surround yourself with successful people. I mean, I figured that out, early
in
on.
recovery.
Well, but even in any aspect of what you are choosing to do with your life at that point, I wanted to be a successful drug dealer, so I hung out with successful drug dealers.
Right.
I wanted to be successful in banking and in real estate, so I surrounded myself with some people that are really successful.
Got it.
But and my recovery life is no different. I have surrounded myself with some really, really strong, powerful, in a sense, famous, if that be. One of the best things that happened for my recovery was the COVID year. That's when I really got involved with much more into social media and Zoom and that kind of stuff. And I was able to reach out to some of these folks because I started a Zoom meeting for folks in Houston recovery, no one asked me to do it. It's just I had a platform to do it.
Right.
Nobody knew what Zoom was.
Right.
March
Yeah,
of
for
20.
sure. That's
right?
exactly right.
Right. And so when the world
the hell
gets shut
is Zoom?
down, well, how's somebody going to go to a meeting? You know, I had.
Oh, because we were shut down, but liquor stores.
Oh, we're open.
We're essential.
Right, of course.
We're essential.
Essential.
Not just
right.
open. They
Right.
were essential.
And so I had this platform, and so I hosted a Zoom meeting 6 days a week, you know, every night, Monday through Friday, and then on Sunday mornings. And, you know, it got up to where we had 100+ people every meeting.
Wow.
Some people from my treatment center, and then the word kind of got out, and then through that, it was, you know, all right, how to get creative. Well, then I just started reaching out to some names, quote unquote, public names.
Sure.
And these people I can call our friends today. You know, they call me and check up on me, and you know, and I still kind of pinch myself like, who am I?
Right.
But like we just said,
We're the same.
I'm just another addict and alcoholic that's found a common solution that is not afraid to talk about it.
Right.
Because I know the things that I've experienced, the bottoms that I've had, and just the path that my life took, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here. And so being able to share that in hopes that hopefully somebody might watch this and say, you know what? Why not me? Why not me?
Or be willing to say
not?
those words. I need help.
Because that opens the door to start asking the right questions.
Right.
What next? What do I need to do?
Right.
But if you don't start with if you don't have that, you know, why not me? That's that hope and a little belief. That
Instead of the why me.
Instead of why me,
Right.
why does this keep happening? No, it's
Right.
that's the wrong question. It's no, what is this teaching you? Well, it should be teaching you that your way of doing things sucks.
Right.
And doesn't work.
And it's going to end up killing you.
You have
Because this
have
road,
two fates.
if you're
You will
truly on
die
this
or
road,
end up in prison.
if
Well,
you're-
to me, prison wasn't an option.
Right.
So it was death.
And if you're truly on this road, it ends one of two ways.
That's it.
You know, death or recovery. I mean, there's just no, you know, there's no middle ground.
But really, and understanding what my truth is today, and the truth is that I'm an addict and alcoholic, and I will die one. I woke up today one.
Right.
It's 6 years and a couple days. That doesn't matter. I woke up today with untreated alcoholism and addiction at 4 a.m. before I went to the gym. I'm a crazy person. But when I woke up this morning, I had untreated alcoholism. And so which required me to take some action to put my disease into arrest. And there's a couple things that I do each and every day to put my disease. That's my medicine.
Keep it in remission.
I got to keep it in remission. So the truth is that I'm going to die an addict and alcoholic. Pretty sure today, if that happens today, it's not the disease that took me out. And I'm okay with that.
Right.
That's
amazing.
I'm at peace with that today.
I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And you know, I just think that it's so important that we continue to just speak out and just try to pull the dark into the light. You know, we gotta shine on it and let people know that you don't have to live in shame.
No.
You
can't heal in shame.
No.
Doesn't work.
And it's not going to get any
Shame
better.
shuts off centers of the brain. Shauna Shapiro, I don't know if you've heard of her. She's an expert in mindfulness. She talks a lot about that, about what we practice grows stronger. I'd like to say I'm really smart and all this is all original material.
Yeah, right.
But it's borrowed.
Right.
From
all
some
of it.
really smart people. Who I'm able to call a friend today because I've reached out and I've talked to these folks and it's the truth. I had to practice getting into a different mindset, and through that practice, things just got better.
Life got better.
Life just got better.
How can people find you?
I'm on social media, David Ludlow Recovery and the Recovery Action Project on Instagram, David Ludlow on Facebook. Again, not anonymous. Or you can find me through Promises Behavioral Health at the Right Step Houston or Promises Brazos Valley and College Station.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I'm so
Christy.
grateful for you
A lot of fun.
to take the time to come and talk. And again, Greg Putnam, thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. Putnam Bookkeeping and Tax Service. If you could use his services, please look him up. You will not be sorry. Thank you so much for listening to the Purpose Driven Sobriety. Thanks for listening to Purpose Driven Sobriety. Keep coming back.